On behalf of folks at Radar and Taplytics, I just want to thank you for taking your time, wherever you are in the world, for joining us for a masterclass on e-commerce optimization best practices. So in terms of what we'll be covering for the purpose of this masterclass, first we'll be going over intros and who we are in terms of who Radar is and Taplytics is respectively. And then in terms of covering the main content, we'll be covering best practices on e-commerce optimization with a simple framework by breaking it down to customer experiences, to out of store, on the way to store, and then in-store experiences. And then we'll be looking at the conversion and post-purchase best practices. So that we'll be covering some concrete use cases of how Taplytics and Radar respectively can help drive better ROI with laser-focused demos of use cases and how we can help with that. And then we'll just cap things off by opening up to Q&A. So in terms of introductions, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Will. I've been with Taplytics for a little over 5 years now. I've held previous roles in technical support, customer success, account management, and now product marketing. Fun factoid about myself is that I am a huge Magic the Gathering nerd. I don't know if you guys see these cards, but if you guys play Magic the Gathering Arena, feel free to let me know your email, reach out to you, and maybe we'll play a game of Magic or two. Now I'll just hand it over to Chelsea, and she'll take a moment to introduce herself.
Thanks, Will. So hi, everyone. My name is Chelsea. I am a Senior Customer Success Manager here at Taplytics. I've been with Taplytics for about 6 months now, working with our enterprise clients across retail, sport, food, and security industries. I'm here to help drive value, educate, and gather feedback on all things Taplytics. A fun fact about myself is I'm a huge plant lover, as you might notice in my background. To date, I've acquired over 40 plants, big and small, throughout my apartment.
Hey everyone, my name is Al. I'm the VP of Business Development here at Radar. Before Radar, I spent about 6 years on the agency side, working at a product agency called Prolific, which focused on helping fast-growing startups and big enterprises figure out their mobile strategy and bring their mobile experience to life. So excited to be here today, and thanks everyone for joining.
All right, now we'll just pass over to Al, and he'll take a few moments to talk about Radar and what they do.
Thank you, Will. So yeah, at the highest level, Radar is a geofencing platform, and basically what you drop our SDK into your mobile app or website, and we can understand what the context of the user is, where they are based on GPS coordinates, and help you build an experience, whether that's in the app itself, via messaging, or some other way to just kind of make that experience better and drive towards the KPIs that you care about. So again, at the highest level, and we'll dive into plenty of use cases throughout this session, but at the highest level, we're working to leverage that contextual information to increase engagement via smarter push messaging, smarter in-app experience, as well as improve operations, whether that's understanding and minimizing the time a customer might be waiting in line, waiting in the parking lot, or improving operational efficiencies within your brick and mortar locations. You can see on the bottom, we work with retailers from American Eagle to Joanne. On the QSR side, you see Pete's Coffee, one of many examples we have there. And then we also work with a number of different brands across a myriad of verticals. Now I'll pass it over to Chelsea to speak about Taplytics.
Thanks, Al. So at a high level, Taplytics helps drive growth in 3 core areas. We offer A/B testing and feature flagging across mobile, web, and OTT. We were actually the first to market for mobile experimentation and designed our platform specifically for ease of creating that truly omni-channel consistent user experience. We also have marketing automation with push notifications and email. And our latest product development is bringing all of our offered capabilities together into a drag and drop canvas where product marketing and engineering teams can collaborate and visualize on those personalized journeys. So similar to Radar, we have the opportunity to work with some amazing clients that span across sports, e-commerce, food industry, and banks. I'll pass it back to you, Will.
Thanks, Chelsea. So now we'll just be touching upon out-of-store experiences and the best practices associated with that. So with respect to best practices around experiencing in your onboarding flow, question that we usually get is like, how do you actually ensure you're delivering the optimal onboarding experience to help customers get to that aha moment and make a purchase from your store on that first experience in order to maximize return on ad spend? So the thing to keep in mind is that your product's onboarding flow is the first thing any of your net new users from a paid acquisition campaign will see. So if you think of it as a first impression, it should be a good one in order to help convey what you offer with the least amount of friction. So some things you might want to consider experimenting with are not only just copy, but also imagery or iconography, perhaps experimenting on different social sign-in options for a frictionless account creation, maybe even the number of screens that are presented as your for that first experience on your mobile app or web app, as well as questioning any sorts of fields that you might not need, like a phone number or birthday or credit card information that might be better deferred to the checkout flow when that information is actually needed. So, and in addition to that, maybe thinking about skipping that first tutorial or allowing the option to skip that tutorial and see how that actually affects conversions and signups, and offer tooltips instead within your app or products beyond the traditional onboarding flow. As for best practices around push notification opt-in modals, this is one of the highest ROI channels on mobile. So how do you actually maximize and continually earn your users' trust? So push notifications are undoubtedly a driver of revenue, retention, engagement. And as you can see here on the left, there's an example from Flip, which is a couponing app. Over here, I don't know if you had the experience where you would download an app and right from the get-go, you're just like hit with that push opt-in permission screen. For me, that's a little bit like a little bit too aggressive in my opinion, without actually knowing like why the benefits of subscribing to push notifications are in the first place. Especially since I would imagine any average person would be suffering from push notification fatigue. So Flip over here instead has done a great job in terms of presenting the main reason why you should subscribe, and the imagery here in order to help you understand what the benefits of that is. So some of the things that you might want to consider experimenting with are the timing of when this push opt-in modal is presented. Perhaps it's when you actually start adding items to carts. Maybe experimenting on images that might better convey what the value is and how to opt in. Or if a user has opted out of push notifications, experimenting on when to represent a similar opt-in at a later point in the customer lifecycle. Next is an example from Nike sneakers app. So yeah, as you can see here, this is a bit of a hybrid onboarding flow. They clearly show and demonstrate the value of their app in the screens, as well as the benefits of subscribing to push notifications, all within that initial onboarding flow. There's different ways about tackling both onboarding flows and push opt-ins, but you'll never know unless you actually experiment and find out what the best experience is to maximize those conversions and return on ad spend for those paid acquisition campaigns. Now I'll pass it over to Al, and he'll be touching upon leveraging location for out-of-store experiences.
Thanks, Will. And so, obviously, if a customer is engaging with your app, but they're not at your store, there are two things you really might want them to do. One is to make a purchase, which I think is pretty straightforward. The second one, which might be a little less clear, is how do we drive them to the store and get them to, engage with the physical experience and hopefully buy something there. And that's something that we focus a lot on at Radar. So, one example just to bring that to life is with Ibotta, who's a customer of ours. If you're not familiar, Ibotta is like a couponing or cashback app. So if you go to Home Depot, whether it's their website or their physical location, and you pay with the Ibotta app instead of paying directly, with credit card or cash or some other method, you'll get cash back through Ibotta. And then the same goes with any of their other participating retail partners, of which they have many, many, many partners. What Ibotta did is, what they wanted to do is say, hey, how do we capture more of the share of wallet of what people are spending when they're actually at the stores of our partners, such as Home Depot, Walmart, Target, Walgreens, et cetera. Ibotta obviously doesn't have access to the address and location of every single one of their partners' locations, across the US or the globe. So, they were looking to kind of find an easy way to put a geofence around every single one of those locations so that they could hit their user with a push notification when they're in the vicinity of one of those partner locations, and remind them about the utility of the Ibotta app and how useful it might be if they happen to be inside one of those stores. So they ended up using Radar. We have a out-of-the-box POI database where you could really quickly set up geofences for any number of household name brands such as Home Depot. And so Ibotta brought that to life, and then you can see the push notification on the screen to the right where it says, "Hey, are you near Home Depot? If you pay with Ibotta, don't forget you'll get cash back on your entire purchase right away." Really easy, simple, utility to just ping the user, remind them, and they only send it when they're kind of in the area of that store anyway. And what they saw was a 30% increase in app opens as soon as they kind of implemented that. And as a result, their revenue and conversion rates went up as well. So really exciting to see that. And then on the next slide, T-Mobile Tuesdays is another customer who does something along the similar lines in terms of leveraging the context of the user's location to drive a better app experience when the user's not in the store. But they take a slightly different approach. If you're a T-Mobile customer, you might be familiar with their popular app, T-Mobile Tuesdays, which is basically an app where T-Mobile provides coupons, discounts, and exclusive deals that drop every Tuesday, as the name implies, for their customer base. And it ranges in terms of all types of different deals. But one piece of consistent criticism they were getting before they started working with us is that the deals, while they might sound good, weren't always geographically relevant for the customers. So, maybe they're promoting some sort of restaurant brand that's only available on the West Coast, but the user is located on the East Coast, or something along those lines. So to solve that, T-Mobile did two things. One, they installed the Radar SDK and started understanding where the user was. And two, on the business development side, they started sourcing coupons and discounts that were more, hyperlocal or geo-specific. And now what the experience is, and you can kind of see this on the left as well, this is a White Castle offer, but it's, it's geo-specific. So it's only being shown and only being offered to a subset of their customers, or the end user of the T-Mobile Tuesdays app, based on users that are kind of in the right geo for that. They saw an increase in conversion and redemption rate as soon as they implemented these location-specific offers in as well. And just goes to show that when you're considering the context of the user and using that to further personalize and contextualize the app experience, it leads to really good things for the engagement of the app. And with that, I'll pass it back to Chelsea to talk about the experience of when a customer is actually on their way to the store.
Yeah, thanks, Al. So with that, we're going to talk a little bit about mobile order ahead and curbside pickup best practices. So mobile ordering platforms have been proven to intensify that customer loyalty, increase purchase frequency, and lift average ticket sizes through order customization and easier checkout options. So this means that mobile ordering is not a simple substitution for in-store purchasing, but a channel that can really enhance the lifetime value of a customer. So why not test these methods? So to highlight some examples of mobile order ahead designs, ways that you can test this with Ritual, they actually show you some examples of mobile order ahead. So you can just easily click and add those to your cart. Versus Grubhub gives you the option just to add more items to increase that order size and navigate back to the menu with an add more button. So testing the placement of this, or showing or not showing this. And lastly, Starbucks adds both experiences together. So add more items with suggesting favorites to allow more ways to add to your cart. A recent study by Business Insider showed that order ahead already increases average order size by 20%. So make sure your customers are getting the best experiences here, and you're testing out these different methods to increase that checkout size. So just to highlight an example here, a QSR client of ours did a test on their order button to either show this button or hide this button. So their results proved that on average, users who were actually exposed to the button variation ordered 4% more line items than those that were on baseline, so not showing that button. Users who didn't order from a favorites page ordered 3% more line items than those that ordered directly from their favorites page. So for average number of line items per order, not showing the button outperformed the variation of showing the button for breakfast and dinner. However, lunch, they notice, is when users added more line items to their order. So just some takeaway tips here are to ensure that all the functions of the application are easy to find and easy to use. Make sure that the buttons on the application are visible and big enough so that a person with any size hands can easily tap them. Make sure to check that all text in the application is big enough and the appropriate font so that users with any sharpness of vision can easily read that. Another best practice is to just continue testing different iterations of your order flows for mobile and even on your websites. Starbucks mobile order and pay already represents 10% of their total transaction at high volume stores, directly contributing to those increased company sales. So for example here, testing out the first page on an order for different users depending on certain attributes can be key. New users, for example, can be segmented into an order flow for featured drinks or the menu for them to start their orders as they may be unaware of what to get. Versus existing users may appreciate a more custom experience, landing them on their previous order or favorites page. So testing these different flows for your users can improve those experiences on mobile order ahead and create higher conversion rates. I'll pass back to Al to talk a bit about leveraging location for on the way to the store experiences.
Thank you, Chelsea. So, obviously optimizing the order experience itself is very important, but once the customer has actually made the order, and maybe it's for curbside pickup or buy online pickup in store, more commonly known as BOPIS, we want to make sure that we're providing a great experience while the customer is kind of en route and once they arrive to pick up that order or that food or whatever it might be as well. One example is American Eagle. They do a really great job with this, and their focus was how do we decrease the wait time and make as frictionless as an experience as possible when the customer is coming to grab their order, again, whether it's for curbside or whether it's for in-store pickup. Basically what they do is use real-time location updates to understand where the user is, how far away they are from arriving, and they can kind of coordinate their staff within the store, within the location, to time it perfectly so they're meeting the customer out at the parking lot in the situation of a curbside pickup. As soon as the customer is pulling in the parking lot, they know the customer is going to be there in a sec. They can run it out, meet them there, and minimize or eliminate any wait time. Similarly, if the customer is going in the store to pick it up, the staff can still kind of have that transparency, understanding, and be able to better anticipate the customer arriving and make sure that that order is ready to go as soon as the customer is kind of on their way. And if you go to the next slide, this just kind of shows a little more detail about how that flow might work. So imagine the customer places their mobile order, and then as you can see kind of on this first graphic on the left, they can indicate that they're on their way. At that moment, we'll start tracking the customer's location, similar to getting directions from Google Maps or something like that. It's not so different than that type of experience. So we're understanding where the customer is, and you can see this dashboard in the center, which is something that the staff at the store would have access to. And it says, okay, customer, for order number 298 is 3 minutes away. The next customer is 9 minutes away. This other customer has arrived. And with that information, again, they're able to just kind of streamline the operational flow of the store and reduce or eliminate customer wait time. It also doesn't only help the staff. You can also see the third image to the right. We're able to use push notifications to trigger messaging to the customer as well. So maybe you want to ask the customer to pull into a specific curbside spot, or once you've seen them pull in the parking lot, you want to send them a reassuring message that just says something like, hey, we know you're out there, we know you just parked, hang tight, we'll be there in a sec, to make sure that there's no frustration or ambiguity about what the next step is once the customer has arrived. So when you kind of bring these together, it helps just increase customer happiness about this overall experience, reduces their wait time, and makes for a much smoother and more streamlined operational process as well. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Chelsea.
Thanks, Al. So using some of those recommendations that I mentioned, I just want to go over some best practices on different flows for curbside pickup. So just a quick stat before that, as of February 2021, 50% of the 211 retail chains identified in the 2020 Digital Commerce 360 top 1,000 e-commerce companies, they offered curbside pickup for orders placed online. So that's up from only 6.6% in April 2020. So a huge jump in companies that are doing this type of method. So like in these COVID times, concerns about health and safety are really going to be top of mind for all customers. And that extends to the curbside pickup just as much as in-person shopping. So really thoughtful planning will help you execute a safe and efficient pickup process. Just to highlight some examples of how some stores are doing this, Walmart, for example, lets you easily identify your vehicle to avoid having to get out of your car and waiting in long lines. Target, as Al mentioned, let staff know when you're on the way to ensure that smooth transition upon pickup, creating that great customer experience. Another way to boost the basket value of each curbside pickup offer is incentives to shop again. So for example, supporting post-pickup coupons or deals for future purchases. Combine that with an opportunity to send feedback on their experience if they do use this option. Last one there is Bed Bath & Beyond. So using a tracker to show where in the queue your order is, making it easy for you to identify when to leave and when you've arrived. So kind of just summarizing this section, right now is a really great opportunity for your organization to start testing these experiences and have it become a part of your product roadmap. So I'll pass it back to you, Al.
Thank you, Chelsea. So, the last kind of piece of this flow of, whether you're at a store on your way to the store or in store, the third piece is the in-store experience. So just want to touch a bit on how to kind of leverage that context to optimize that experience. So, to go back to the American Eagle example, I just can't help but give them props. They do such a great job leveraging the context of the user to drive the experience. When you're actually inside an American Eagle location, they geofence each of their stores so they can understand if an app user is actually in the store. And they basically serve you a different app experience when you're in the store versus when you're not. One of the cool features that they do or that they provide to in-store shoppers is scan and pay. So basically, as you're pulling clothing or other items off of the shelves to make a purchase, you can actually use your phone, your phone's camera and the American Eagle app to scan those items and kind of be a self-checkout experience of sorts, and then pay through the app. Just ask any staff member or associate who's around if they could pull the tags off your clothing, and then you can be on your way. Again, the goal here is how do we make the experience for the customer as easy, seamless, and as little friction as possible. And they kind of identified that waiting in line is something that customers obviously prefer not to do. And this is a way to kind of alleviate that. So transferring more orders to digital where they can kind of measure and associate with loyalty programs, reducing friction for the customer, and just overall kind of bringing a better experience to the in-store experience that they're providing for the user. And then one other example is BJ's Wholesale Club. They also do scan and pay, and they also use a geofence to promote that, which is great. But they actually have a few other experiences that they even go above and beyond that to make sure that the customer is getting the best experience possible when they're in store. One is in-store coupons. So you can see the screenshot of their in-club mode to the right. Again, this is a mode that's only accessible really when you open the app in a store within the geofence that they've set up. So they have this couponing section where you can get access to today's deals and the latest coupons that are just specific to that store. And you can't necessarily access those in another way. So just direct value via, being able to save money off of the things that you're buying is always a great way to add value for a customer. And then the other one is, they have delis where you can order, sandwiches, cheeses, deli meats, etc. And that's a point of friction for the customer because you have to, go up to the deli counter, grab a ticket, wait for your number to be called, wait for your order to be prepared, and then, you can finally go on your way after all that. In addition to the checkout line, that's kind of the other major point of friction that BJ's identified in store that they wanted to try and solve. So the other in-store feature that they have put together is deli ordering, where from anywhere in the store, even if you're not even remotely near the deli, you could place your deli order, and then they'll get to work on it. And then, once you're done kind of buying everything else and kind of making your way through the store, you could stop by the deli as your last stop and just grab your order that has already been prepared and made for you. Basically eliminating the need to wait in line or to kind of interact with the deli counter any more than you need to. So again, it's focused on kind of increasing cart size by kind of offering easier ways to transact. It's moving more of the sales to digital, where it's easier to tie to loyalty. And it's also just reducing friction for the customer by not requiring that they wait in one or two or several lines while they're kind of walking through the store and buying things along the way. So with that, I'll pass it over to Will to talk about post-purchase optimization and conversion best practices there.
Thanks, Al. So in terms of optimizing for conversions, it's an absolute must to implement abandoned carts, emails, and push notifications. A recent study has shown that estimated that abandoned carts attribute to over $1 trillion in lost revenue globally. So why do users abandon carts in the first place? It can be a combination of different factors, from price when it comes to like unexpected cost, or a customer has found a better price elsewhere, or maybe it's simply too expensive and they just decided to not move forward with the purchase. Another example could be poor technology or processes behind that, where the website or app was a little bit too difficult to navigate, or there's a crash, or just like the process was too long because of a really complicated checkout flow, or maybe even the website at times. Another reason could be just the lack of commitment, where users are just like doing some research and they're just browsing and they just decided not to buy. And lastly, perhaps it could be security, where with excessive payment security checks, that adds like a lot of friction to the checkout process, or even on the flip side, payment security concerns. So in order to protect and recover revenue, a few things you should consider experimenting with are the timing of your push notification or email, obviously the copy, or even the images, if you're using rich push notifications on mobile, or the urgency around the messaging, around, as well as like the different channels that you can actually experiment with, whether it's outside of push or email. It could be like SMS, or even voice if you have like a voice-enabled app from Alexa or Google Home. So what about building loyalty after that very first purchase for your newly acquired users? A great strategy to help your customers convert more and build a habit of shopping at your store is setting a thank you incentive after that very first purchase, or even offer a subscription at a lower initial price if that offer is part of your offerings, in order to help turn those first-time customers into hopefully lifelong customers, with the goal of increasing customer lifetime value. An example on the right over here is from Sleep Country, where they have a pretty sweet offer where you can get $230 off anything in store if you qualify for qualifying product lines. So some of the things you might want to consider here in terms of experimenting on are the timing of the offer, perhaps throwing in free shipping as an incentive, changing the threshold for the amount spent to qualify for the offer, maybe make it a little bit lower. Obviously the copy, the amount of incentive that you're offering in order to help users make a repeat purchase on your store, or maybe even implementing variable rewards that are randomly interspersed, or maybe even like a gamification style loyalty system in order to help those customers become lifelong customers. In terms of optimizing for your checkout flow and for best practices, this is undoubtedly the most important part of your e-commerce app to experiment on, outside of the products that you sell itself. So your checkout flow is pretty much the gatekeeper to helping you actually generate revenue. In our opinion, you should actually be, you should question everything in your initial checkout flow. So, asking, whether or not do you really need their phone number, or, like that second address line, or, could it be asked at another point on another screen. Some other things to consider are, is your copy clear and succinct? Are there errors due to lack of input, or are they clear? Are security trust marks necessary? some of the things that consider are required fields, the payment options available, maybe offering financing as something to experiment on, or the different payment options, whether it's like through was like Apple Pay or Google Pay or PayPal and Affirm and so on and so forth. And finally, the images that you're using in that checkout flow as well. So it's a fine balance, but you won't know what works best until you actually experiment. Another example here is leveraging the real estate in your checkout flow for increasing average order value with cross sales or upsells. So maybe it's just a little bit too noisy, or actually impedes user from following through their purchase. So maybe another way of thinking about if you actually do have it implemented is hiding those things to see whether or not it affects the actual conversion rate of your checkout flow. Or if you don't have it implemented, perhaps leveraging recommendations algorithms for something that they might like, or adding elements of scarcity such as flash deals, or even like countdown timer in order to emphasize that it's like a limited time offer. So I'll pass it over to Al now, and he'll talk about this on the radar side.
Yeah, thanks, Will. So believe it or not, location can also be helpful when you're talking about checkout funnel optimization. And just to give kind of one quick anecdote here, I'm sure everyone's familiar with the idea of address autocomplete. You can see an image on the right, but you start typing the name of a location or an address, and all of a sudden you get some recommendations on how to finish that more quickly. This is definitely a best practice in the checkout funnel. And if you have it, I'm sure you're aware of the benefits. If you don't, I would strongly suggest looking into it and considering adding it. We have I can't disclose the name, but a major sneaker and shoe retailer, e-commerce company, who tested out leveraging Radar to do address autocomplete in their checkout flow. Before that, they hadn't used address autocomplete. And they did a head-to-head A/B test, against the status quo to see if it would make a difference. They actually saw a full 2%, or nearly a 2% increase in conversion in the checkout funnel alone after they implemented this, which, if you think about that at scale, is a huge, huge difference, can be huge revenue numbers, and ended up being one of the most impactful A/B tests that they did all year last year. So, something to really consider is just, minor conveniences and small ways that you can just make that checkout funnel slightly easier can make a really big difference for your bottom line. So with that, I'll pass it back to Will, who's going to do a demo of part of the Taplytics platform.
All right, thanks, Al. So I'm just going to hop over to an experiment I already had in motion. I'm going to head over to, I don't know if you guys see my screen, just want to double check. You guys see? Perfect. All right, so this is Canadian Tire. So I already created the experiment over here. And right now what you're seeing is a Taplytics web visual editor. We make the claim of being the easiest and fastest no-code experiment platform on the web. So what you can see here is the use case that we're specifically catering to is being able to do no-code experiments, specifically targeting any copy or text on your website. So over here, this is what Canadian Tire already has on the website in their baseline variation, so there's no treatment at all. But what if they actually, once Ontario opens up and we can actually visit stores in person in order to get our shop on. So I already made some changes, but I'm going to hop over and switch over to the variation over here. Just give me a second. Oh, it is not quite agreeing with me. Oh boy. Okay, well, that's fine. I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to head over experiments. I should be able to head over to that. Let me just double check that. That is not working. That's fine. Okay, cool. So I'm going to head over to the Canadian Tire demo over here, and I am just going to let that load for a moment. And I'm just going to grab the URL over here, and it's going to input it, and I'm going to go ahead and start editing. So what I'll do is I'll punt me over to the Canadian Tire website, and it'll load the visual editor dropdown to let us know which variation we're in. So as that's loading, as you can see here, there's the default text. And once Taplytics is loading, oh, there we are, perfect. So I'm going to switch over to our Okay. All right, actually, it's gonna go ahead and edit. Oh, there we go, perfect. Click on variation. And what I'm gonna do is gonna grab text over here. Maybe actually, I think that was it. I'll click on edit. Ah, perfect. So I'm gonna hop over and head over to variation 1. So I already made the changes. And what will happen is that with the text that I've already made changes to, just wait for a moment for that text to pop in. Oh yeah, right there. So if once the moment the government of Ontario determines that it's safe to shop in stores again, obviously they'll want to make the changes right away. And the benefits of that are not having to bug any engineers in order to make these simple text changes. All you have to do is actually click on the element itself and make the changes on your own. So over here, I'm just going to click on the div. And as you can see over here, you can actually make the changes to HTML itself in order to make the changes without having to bug your engineers in order to make this messaging clear to sync. So I'm gonna pass it back to Al now, and he's gonna talk about the radar use case.
Thanks, Will. Let me just share my screen. Cool. So, I think that there's a common misconception that location can be kind of messy or hard to get started with. So just want to kind of put that to rest and show you how easy it is to get started with location geofences and using that to kind of activate a push notification campaign or an in-app experience. So this is the radar dashboard. One quick prerequisite is that you just pop our SDK into your mobile app, which is very easy to get started with. And let's say that you want to put, maybe you just opened up a new storefront in JFK Airport and you want to message your customers who are, in JFK to make sure that they're aware of that and maybe try and drive them to your store to make a purchase. All you do is go to new. We could type in JFK Airport. And you can see, that pops up here. Obviously, JFK is a lot bigger than that beginning circle, so you can kind of customize how wide it is. Maybe that's too wide. Maybe we want to do something like that. So, we're kind of getting there, but circle is not always the best. Maybe we want to make that a little smaller. You can really customize this however you want, but we also offer a few other options that might make a lot more sense in this case. One is a polygon. So, JFK is a weird shape. Maybe you want to just kind of draw your own geofence, but you can make this any shape you want. And it kind of, you can hug it, you can just kind of tailor it to your needs and make it a lot easier that way. But let's say that you want to actually take a step further and say, for people who are on their way to JFK Airport, I want to know, anyone who's within a 10-minute car ride and be able to hit them with a push notification. In that case, we have this third option called isochrone geofences. And what that basically does is from a center point, which in this case is JFK Airport, you can say, I want to I want to have a geofence for anyone within a 15-minute drive of JFK Airport. So, we have different options. It's car, truck, on a motorbike, on a regular bike, or by foot. And that obviously changes the geofence, but maybe we want to do, 7 minutes from JFK Airport by car. Maybe it's 15 minutes by JFK Airport. Oops, 15. And you can see it kind of sputters out into the highways. So again, as soon as you kind of set that up and hit create, just like that, you'll start getting entry and exit events as people are entering and exiting that geofence. And then one other thing I wanted to just run through is let's say that you're, let's say that you're a grocery store and you want to understand when customers or your app users are going to any grocery store, not just yours, but maybe that information is helpful. So in our settings, we have this places option. And if you enable that and say, I want to understand when people are entering and exiting a specific place, and the category is grocery store. Just like that, we have this database that we source from Yelp, Pitney Bowes, a number of other sources, and kind of stitch that together to make a really comprehensive database of, in this case, food and grocery, but, we have all kinds of categories. If you want airports, if you want, public parks, if you want coffee shops, if you want restaurants, it's really all over the place depending on what your vertical and use cases are. So really easy to set that up. And then if you wanted to take a step further and maybe go for specific change as well, it's easy to set that up. And, in this case, we'll send an entry and exit event whenever someone enters a grocery store, but also now whenever someone specifically enters a Walmart or a Target. You can do this for your own stores. You can do this for your competitive stores, whatever makes the most sense for the use cases that you're trying to do. And then based on that, you can use webhooks. You can use one of our pre-built integrations to send that to a tool like Taplytics, which can then activate it further via push messaging, email messaging, tailoring or tweaking the in-app experience. And again, any use case you could really think up, leveraging and being enhanced by the context to where the user actually is at that moment.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Magic. Cool. So I'm going to go back and share my screen here. So now we'll just open things up to Q&A. So if y'all see if you guys look in the bottom of Zoom there is a Q&A button there. So looking forward to your questions there, and hopefully, we'll be able to answer anything and everything related to Taplytics and Radar. So looks like we have a question here from Maxine beforehand. What's the best practice for getting users to opt in for location during the onboarding flow? Al, maybe you could tackle that one.
Yeah, opt in for location. So that's a great question. And I know the Taplytics team touched on getting customers to opt in for push. It's really not so different. The most important thing is that you're conveying the value of why you need location information. If you just ask for it as soon as the app is installed, your opt-in rate is going to be pretty low. My recommendation would be to wait until the moment where the customer actually gets value out of it. Maybe that's the first time, they're in an area where your store is located. Maybe it's the first time they go to the store locator within your app. Maybe it's the first time they place a mobile order for pickup. If you're able to kind of figure out what that moment is that makes the most sense, where the value is really obvious to the user, and then you can actually explain that in like a sentence or two on the screen, you're going to have a really high opt-in rate. And I would recommend kind of delaying that question until that moment. Once you get it, once you're able to convey that value and provide a nice experience for the customer, it's like they're most likely to kind of stay opted in. The examples where we see problems is where an app asks for your location. There's not a really obvious value that they're giving the customer. Maybe they're just using it for data collection practices, and that's something we certainly don't encourage. So just to kind of summarize that, it's wait for the right moment and make sure that you're properly conveying the value to the user of how they stand to benefit from giving you that information. And if those two things are clear, you're most likely to get a really high opt-in rate.
That's amazingly thorough answer. Could have said it better myself. Let's look at another question here. What do we have? It's from Jeff. What metrics should I use to consider the success of our buy online pickup in-store experience? You want to handle that first? I have a bit that I can share as well, Al.
Sure. So, the two metrics, well, there's a lot that you can look at here. I think a couple that are important to me is being able to measure and minimize the wait time for your customer. So, when they arrive for a curbside pickup or a BOPIS pickup, you don't want them sitting in the parking lot, or you don't want them having to arrive and then wait 10, 15, 20 minutes. We've certainly seen and heard some horror stories about that in the last year or so, where customers, they do an order for curbside pickup, they drive to the store, they pull in the parking lot, and then they just sit there for 15 minutes and have no idea what's supposed to happen next. They get frustrated, they walk in the store, defeating the whole purpose of curbside, creating an angry customer. So it's really important that you're focused on minimizing wait times, and you can do that by anticipating the arrival of the customer and getting a heads up before they arrive, and kind of alerting your staff about that and make sure that they can meet the customer as quickly as possible and reduce, if not eliminate, wait times. A lot of companies don't even measure wait time, or dwell time as it's sometimes called. So, that's something that we recommend doing as well. And we help a lot of customers with that. The other KPIs is just really like operational efficiencies. If you're a restaurant, you want to make sure that food is staying hot and fresh when the customer receives it. You want to make sure that the flow through the kitchen is smooth and consistent, and we're not creating bottlenecks with people showing up at different times. There's applications in the retail side as well, making sure that the operations of the business and the location are smooth, and being able to anticipate customers' arrival goes a long way towards alleviating those issues. Will, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. So let me read the question. So what metrics should I use to measure the success of our online pickup in-store experience? So bring it one level up. It's always the best practice to actually have all the events tied to those particular buttons in advance on your apps or web for web or mobile in order to determine how to present your options of buying online with home delivery or picking up in store. So one way of thinking about it is in the context of Radar's offering is leveraging their location offerings to present the closest locations in the simplest way possible for your customers to choose the best location for them to make it easier for them for curbside pickup. Another way to determine the efficacy if you're running an experiment or just like trying to measure it in general is creating a funnel and just understanding the drop-off rate and understanding like the time on each view and which parts of the app they're interacting with in order to give you a better signal to understand whether or not the experience that you're trying to deliver to your customer actually is delivering on the promise of curbside pickup. Cool. So next question over here is from, let's see, Nick. How can we use location to keep customers engaged post-purchase? Maybe you could take that out.
Yeah, so post-purchase, I think to go back to the Ibotta example is thinking about, how can we get, once they make one purchase, how can we help them come back for the next one? There's certainly a loyalty play there. There's certainly, kind of habit formation, habit development. And sometimes that requires a little bit of a nudge. So, I think Ibotta does a great job of continually engaging their customers. When the customer is, within proximity of a store that Ibotta partners with, they make sure to send a push notification to the customer to remind them. So whether it's kind of continuing to engage based on where the customer is relevant to your stores or relevant to your partner stores in that case, I think that's a really strong play. The other opportunity on the location side anyway is being able to retarget in-store shoppers. So obviously if someone visits your website or logs into your experience or logs into your loyalty platform in your app, it's easy to target and retarget them because you presumably have their email address and some other information. But if they're in your store, it's not always so easy to know that. And if you're able to understand and have a geofence around your store and understand when customers are in your store, you can use that for targeting and retargeting purposes also. And understanding that they either recently bought something or have a strong intent to buy. And you can kind of make sure that you lock that sale in with retargeting, even through own channels such as email. You don't even have to necessarily resort to advertising at that point. So those are just a couple ways that I think location plays in, but Will or Chelsea, you might have some other ideas on your end. Oh, Will, you're on mute.
No, I think you answered pretty well. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Let's see, let's maybe make some time for one more question. It's from Min. How would you revisit old experiments? I'm assuming these are experiments that you've previously executed before. I'll just assume that. Okay, so if you're revisiting old experiments that you've done before, from what I've noticed anyway, from some of our enterprise customers, it really depends on the appetite and the bandwidth of not only the appetite and bandwidth of your teams, but how mature they are as well. From our experience, for any successful experiments that actually had some sort of meaningful impact, I'd say revisiting at least once a year just to see whether or not the changes that you made after successful experiment still hold true. And if it is the reverse of that, where you had a hypothesis and the idea fell out on its face. It really depends on your bandwidth and the how mature the organization is in terms of how you're affecting your backlog and how you can actually get those experiments back into the engineering backlog. So whether or not your team sprint cycle is like 2 weeks or a month, it just really depends on how much of an emphasis you're putting on experimentation and learning. Obviously, it might sound a little bit self-serving. I think it makes sense to experiment as often as possible in order to iterate towards the best possible outcome. But hopefully that answers your question there. Okay, let's see if there's any other questions. No, doesn't look like it. Well, if there isn't anywhere else at the top of the hour, really appreciate you guys spending your time with us this lovely evening, morning, or afternoon, depending on wherever you are in the world. On behalf of the folks at Taplytics and Radar, we really appreciate your time. And yeah, we'll be sending you a recording, a link to our slide deck afterwards in email. Cheers, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.
Bye.